And it doesn't matter how much you love your family, like when you start looking back and seeing some of the stuff that went on, and when you actually do the work to start kind of coming back to self and dealing with that trauma, and you start healing, not just recognizing that it's there, but actually doing the work, it makes ADHD worse because your brain just starts to go.
Welcome everyone to another beautiful podcast and another wonderful day with another wonderful lady with striking glasses. I'm a glass man for sure. And she's bright. She's got these red, you can't see, you probably can't see, but we just had a conversation just before, and I must admit I do like those glasses. I can always trust a person that wears glasses. Trust me, you can always do that. So enough of me talking gibberish. Theresa Tayler is with us today, and she's ADHD, but I do not have a clue what she does, how she helps people, or her backstory. As always, clueless Eli has to try and have that conversation to bring out the information. So Theresa, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So I will do the typical thing and ask, what do you do in your business to help people to be successful? And we'll go with the flow from there.
Sure. So I have a PR bureau agency called Start Me Up Public Relations. We're located in Calgary, Canada, but can work with anybody from anywhere, essentially. And we are storytellers for entrepreneurs and innovators, some artists, and we cover things like the media relations and creating content buckets and strategies for them to get their story out into the universe, try to book them on cool podcasts like this, and zero in on their core mission and stories, and come up with ways to tell the world. And I say it's public relations for aliens and oddballs. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs in general feel like aliens and oddballs a lot of the time. I have a lot of sci-fi characters and aliens, and I have a lot of like aliens that have like suits and stuff on, because I feel like sometimes we all feel that way. No matter if you're founding an NFP or a business, or you're scaling a multi-million-dollar business, or you're just trying to get to revenue, or you're an artist or a musician, if you're trying to do anything interesting or different, it can be quite alienating.
Oh, that's interesting. Alienating.
Yeah, that's what we do. And I come from Start Me Up PR. I come from a journalism background. I was a journalist for the first part of my career. So that's where the PR comes from. You went with the flow because it was familiar, and you obviously made the contacts and enough experience, so you went down that route. So somewhat. Do you know what? I'm going to go for the kill straight away. I usually wait for a little while, but I'm interested about your neurodivergence, which is your ADHD. So I'm interested because we're always interested in how people can be still successful. Even though the majority of people out there, when they first start out to try to be an entrepreneur, they think they can't do it because they have so-called things wrong with them. And for me, that's not the right thinking. I don't think we have anything wrong with us. We're the stronger in certain things and we're weaker on others, just like anyone on this earth. As simple as that from my point of view. But from your point of view, when did you find out you were ADHD, and why did you try and push to find out that you were ADHD? So what happened? Sure. Well, I found out just a couple of years ago, and I'm sort of on the same wavelength as you, where there's a lot of buzzwords around, and they're real, around neurodivergence or ADHD, or now it's, where do you fit on the autism spectrum, and things like TikTok and all the stuff we can resource now are wonderful in some ways because it provides us community and it provides us access to information. I think on the flip side of that, sometimes there can be rabbit holes of misinformation, and sometimes we can get stuck in wanting to label ourselves and others. So when I started my career, I was a journalist. we'll have to talk later about where you are in London. I lived in London for a bit. I lived in Cambridge. I came home to Canada in my 20s and thought I was going to do poli-sci or something, but went into journalism. Was always gravitating towards that, and kind of came up in a time when print was going the way of the dinosaur. So I came up in I think it's a really interesting time looking back in history to see. I mean, it was kind of frustrating for me at the time. Like you graduate and you get hired at a daily, national or a regional daily, and then the ground falls out from under everything as media tries to figure out the internet and how to digitize and social media. But I think looking back, it worked really well for me because I was at a daily newspaper, so it was like hurry up and wait, right? Like you put somebody with ADHD tendencies on a deadline, a daily deadline, and you just have to do it. And you kind of like, looking back, and I think a lot of reporters are like this, you kind of sit there during the day thinking about your story or calling people or figuring out like how you're going to get your stories done. And then around 3 p.m., like this looming deadline sort of starts going like that. And then it's like hyper focus and you make magic happen. So I didn't know it then, but now I'm like, that's why I was attracted to that career. But that's how I started. And then I did some other stuff with Science Center, their media relations and communications, and worked for a university after that as their publications editor for alumni magazines and websites and stuff. And in my mid-30s, I went through some life changes. You go through divorce, you start looking at your career, you start looking at maybe some of your family dynamics and your past, and wanted to make a change. And I started thinking about forming this company, Start Me Up Public Relations, sort of right before COVID hit, and founded it the year COVID hit. Been around ride in a lot of different capacities, but one of my first clients was somebody I'd known for many, many years, and did a wonderful NFP that was about supporting women in STEM, supporting women in technology. And I just noticed like I was a really high performer before. I was starting to drop the ball on things. And she kind of noticed too. And as soon as she noticed, it was like, holy shit, like I can screw stuff up for myself, but I'm not going to screw something up for somebody else. Yeah. And that's when I thought, I'm seeing things about myself. I think I want an assessment. And that's when I got the assessment for ADHD, which came back like, yes. But I also have a fair amount of CPTSD from stuff that has happened in childhood and just generational traumas and stressors. And I think it's a bit of a mishmash of all of it, and getting older and experiencing that brain fog, perhaps living through something like COVID. Perhaps it is, women, and perimenopause is a big topic right now as well. I don't think I'm in it. I've had my hormones.
But why are you talking about menopause, premenopause? You're not that old, are you?
Because I'm not. I'm supposedly not in it.
She looks. Listeners, she looks younger than. Trust me. Don't try and play the sympathy thing because you're not that old.
Thank you. But that's a big thing that's impacting women. Why more women are getting diagnosed as well. So I am ADHD, I think, and I know I have CPTSD.
What is that, by the way? Because a lot of people don't know what that is. ADHD, most people do, but not.
It's complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's the difference between PTSD. PTSD is usually about one or a significant event, a car crash, going to war, and having a particular incident happening. Complex post-traumatic is about usually a series of incidents or traumas that happened over a longer period of time that start to rewire the brain. But I'm sort of with you. I know that I'm ADHD. I know that some of it runs in my family. that some of the medication I'm on has really helped me, but I don't like the labels. And I think that there's a lot of gray area in between why I'm experiencing some of this stuff and how it's impacting me and my business and my life. And yeah, I know that we live in a world where we have to label stuff so that we know what it is, but it's a tough one, because when I think of coping mechanisms or dealing with things, or I think like people want to call it a disability or or something. I mean, my ADHD and CPTSD, whatever, neurodivergence, it has impacted me at work and in my life in negative ways. It has also impacted me in positive ways, but I've seen atypical or typical people have the same struggles, or I don't know.
No, you're totally right. I mean, you were saying just before you wanted to have the ADHD test, you were quite hypersensitive, not just before, way before that, because you obviously got your job and you were very focused and you noticed that was happening, but then you started dropping the ball before you decided to take the test. So I want to ask this, knowing that the hyper focus is part of your ADHD, if that was starting to wane, what made you think I should have a test of ADHD? What was going on there?
Yeah, I think when you start noticing certain things in yourself, you're like, okay, why am I doing this? Or why can I not organize my thoughts anymore? Or why am I dropping the ball in these areas? I'm like any human being, and I'm a former journalist, and you start to Google, you start to research, you start to think, well, why am I like this? Or is anybody else having this issue? And as I started to go down that rabbit hole, that's when I thought, maybe I should get an assessment. And, when I did finally get that assessment, I think it was 38 or 39, maybe I was 40, I'm 43 now. I started to think, like, I went through the assessment process and it came back positive. And then it took me about a month to go to my doctor. Like, I felt like I was going to walk into the doctor's office and she was going to be like, you do not have ADHD. You just are going through stuff and you need to get it together. Like, I thought she would deny me access. Like she would question, and she didn't at all. Of course, she's very good. And that's another story as well about once you are assessed, going down the road to whether you're going to take medication and other tools. I would highly suggest people don't just go to a medical doctor, but look at other resources as well. But then I got the prescription, the script for the first set of drugs. And it took me about another month to go get them filled. And I just there's something about it. I don't know if it was the label. I don't know if it was fear of being on a long-term drug or short-term drug. I don't know what it was, but it just took me a while. It took me about a month. And then I thought, I'm going to go fill this prescription. And I remember I went to the pharmacy and it was a very small amount of whatever it was. I think it's like an Adderall, like 5 milligrams. And I took it in the car. I remember driving home. And about 15 minutes into my drive, I just stopped at a light. And I remember thinking, I looked at the light, I looked at the road, and I remember hearing, wow, that's a light, that's a road, that's it. And I can remember just the calm. And I got home and pounded through a bunch of work, sent it off, and one of my clients called me and said, wow, you just killed it. Are you you're doing so well? They had no idea what was going on. And I thought, oh God, yeah. This is whatever it is, whether it's ADHD or something that presents like ADHD. These meds are helping, which means I need to keep on track of this. And that's sort of, my story in a nutshell. And now, so I've been going on a couple of years and had some interesting experience with different medication and trying to kind of figure stuff out and get the right therapy and do the right healing and mitigation and management of it. But
okay. Well, you were talking about, there's an issue when you got diagnosed and then talking about medication but not going to a typical doctor. What was the situation? What happened there? And so you got diagnosed, and then the conversation of medication had to take place. So what was the issue around there? Just give us a...
Yeah, so I don't know what it's like with the NHS, but within Alberta and in Calgary in Canada, I was sent, you have your regular GP. Uh-huh. So I went to my regular doctor, and I will say that, they're not specialized in psychiatry, so they're kind of throwing medication at people and hoping it works. They're obviously very informed, and they mean well. They're always going to do well by patients and kind of reassess and look at what's happening. But I found it was like a bit of like throwing, I don't know, what's the term, spaghetti at a wall. Like they'll give you one thing and you try it. And luckily for me, the thing that I tried worked. If I had tried a drug that wasn't the right fit and it had not worked for me, I probably would have abandoned the whole idea that I even had this, and who knows where I'd be then. But I have been re-prescribed different things along the way, and sometimes it's like, it seems like they're just throwing stuff at me, because that's all you can kind of do is test stuff out. And so I've been pretty careful with that recently, because I've had some interesting experiences where something is prescribed, like these alter your brain, so you have to be careful. And I think that I pair it with a lot of, I've been doing, I've had a therapist for years, a wonderful therapist, a psychologist, and now I have a trauma-informed psychologist, and I've been doing EMDR. I don't know if you're familiar with.
No, no.
Yeah. When somebody first told me about it, I thought, what kind of scam witchery is this? Essentially, it's like a bilateral light therapy. It's bilateral movement. Where they take you back and talk you through some of the traumatic events or time periods that you've been through, and kind of rewire the brain. And it's just like, I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but it seems to work. It seems to work. For CPTSD, it takes a while.
Okay.
I think it can be a little bit more impactful if you have like one specific event.
Okay.
But yeah, I try all the things. I do my yoga. I try to work out.
And do you do this these alternatives with your medication, or do you try to put your medication to the side and see if something natural works from that point of view? How do you run that situation? I do it all together. I hope that one day, when I get my business to where I want it to be, and I have a calmer life, and maybe I won't need medication. Maybe I'll manage it without medication. But for the moment, I am on stuff to help me focus it. And I don't know what it's like for you, and what your neurodivergency is. I find it, to be honest, because it's very difficult for me to focus sometimes. Loads of things are going on, because it could be 10 things going on and my brain's going like crazy, and I have to do it now, that kind of thing. But how I manage it, I manage my neurodivergence with, I'm a Buddhist. So I do a lot of chanting, do meditation, that type of thing. And because I've got that going in the background, it helps me center. So if I'm having a really tough day, no matter what that tough day is, and I get very frustrated or overwhelmed or whatever the case may be, then I'll just literally pray. And I'm a very musical person, and you would know, with a lot of neurodivergent, music really helps a lot if you need to focus or if you need to be a certain way. And I've always used music to control the way I want to feel. And at the same time, I'll make sure I meditate in the morning and I'll meditate at night. And because Buddhism is very musical, when you're chanting, it works again for me, because the way it resonates when I'm chanting, it literally solidifies me. It keeps me calm and focused. So I use that instead of anything else, and it works for me.
You want to know, that's so interesting, because when I was talking about bilateral beats, bilateral light, it's a lot of it is music. And if you can find music that is bilateral when you're meditating, or just, but so it's that
very similar
consistency or tapping, right?
Yeah.
And so that is part of my world as well. And I do find when I, fall off of good habits of meditation and morning yoga and stretching and just having that daily mindfulness, things do start to kind of go off the rails, for sure. But I didn't really think of, I meditate, and I'm a musical person as well. I was very musical when I was a teenager, which maybe that's why I was able to manage it better at that time. But the whole bilateral and EMDR field and what they're doing there, that is like a meditation. It is meditation. It's just another way of saying it, and maybe a more palatable westernized DSM-5 version of what it is, I think. I don't know. I think we need to...
Listen, there's so many different, there's no right and there's no wrong. I keep on saying this to people. Just because I've just said, I'm a Buddhist and I've done this and this works for me, I'm not saying, yep, that works, it'll work for everybody. You found something that works for you. It's a form of meditation. You sit there, and you have timing. Things are being timed. So you get the strobe light that's timing, and you've got the music that's timing. And so that helps you to focus, and then it helps calm the body. And that won't work for everybody. It'll work for some. And so, it is. There's different forms of meditation, and some people, meditation won't work at all, and you just got to test it. And but yeah, I know what works for me, and I'm just blessed to be in a position that I've got my Buddhism. That's for sure. When I started Buddhism, I felt like I came home. Because of that's kept me centered. So we'll see. But I do hear about these medications, fantastic things that you take, and bing, you just totally focus. And I think, oh God.
It's, it kind of, the more you take this stuff, the less it seems to work.
Yeah, of course. Just like any medication. It's the same.
I think for me, and I think for a lot of women, I hear the same thing. A lot of ADHD, kind of how it manifests, is less about hyperactivity or what we think of little boys in the 90s. It is anxiety and rumination. And this stuff just kind of brings it down to like, oh, I don't feel so bad about that situation, or I'm not ruminating on that today. I can handle that, and I can get from A to B. And so I found it really useful for that. I had a doctor prescribe Ativan once for just a short period of my life, to get through something. And I remember taking it and thinking, I don't really know if this is doing anything. I took a whole bunch once and I finally went to sleep. But Ativan to me was this is doing nothing for me. Taking speed calms me right down. So
Did it really?
Yeah, Adderall is.
Do you know what, Theresa? Theresa, you know what you should have done as soon as you got it and that happened? You should have gone back to the shop and said, I've got a bad batch.
Yeah.
Because it's obviously not working.
But yeah, right away, if you have that type of brain, whatever label you want to put on it, if you're taking an upper, like Adderall, and it's not like just making you hyper focused, like speed, if it's actually bringing you, calming you down and making you kind of more mindful, you probably have ADHD.
Okay, so let's talk more about your ADHD. Now you've got a bit of hindsight. Obviously you found out about approximately 2 years ago that you was ADHD, but now you know what it looks back with hindsight. How far can you go back seeing those causes of ADHD? Go right back as you can, and you think, oh yeah, I was 5 years old and so, or I was 2, or whatever the case was. Go as far as you can. Yeah.
Looking back for me, and I'm really careful about how I talk about complex posts like CPTSD and ADHD. We have a wonderful researcher in Canada called it's Gabor Mate. He's an MD, but he does a lot of research on trauma and ADHD, and not everybody agrees with him. He likes to correlate ADHD and complex post-traumatic disorder, and he speaks on it, and he's been wonderful for me to understand some of what I'm going through. But just like you said, like you can't put people into a box. You can't put these labels into a box. Everybody is made up of different puzzle pieces.
Yes.
And so for myself, looking back, like, yeah, high anxiety as a kid, I see that now. Hyper focus, like when I was into music, I was into music. Like I played my guitars 24/7, and that was it. That was all I did for very many years of my life, to the point where I'm amazed that I didn't end up in the music industry and that I don't play anymore. There's another story behind that of like leaving something for a while and trying to come back to it and not being perfect at it anymore. So not wanting to, but so the hyper focus was there. Always been like a bit of a different thinker. I don't know if that's the time I was raised in, or my parents, or I've always sort of been that person that was, I wasn't a troublemaker, but I would be thinking about the other points of view, that person that the teachers were, oh my God. But it's a journalism brand too, right? Why I wanted to go into journalism. But looking back, I think it really hit in my teenage years, like going from honor roll to just like suddenly not wanting to be in class and being really frustrated with things and starting to feel more depressed. And there's probably some correlation with family stuff there too, but for the most part, came from, there's no, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like I know what you mean, and I look back and I always see the points in time, but I have no other experience to draw from. I can't remember much of my past lives if we have them, so I can't really go back and access and go, oh, here's a person I was when I didn't have ADHD. So now I have a qualifier to say, oh, here's where really where it really hit. And then I've always been like adventurous in that. I love traveling. I love moving around to like different, I've lived in one or two cities all my life, between London, Cambridge, and Calgary. But like I'm happy when I'm on an airplane by myself, going somewhere with my camera gear. I noticed, I think in my 20s, I think it was when I started post-secondary, I was about 22. I'd taken a couple gap years.
Okay.
It was, pulling pints in London and Cambridge, and came home and went to university, college. And I think I took an applied degree in journalism. So it's half academic and half in the field.
Okay.
So with camp internships at newspapers or radio stations or TV stations. Yeah. And I really thrived in it. And I think it was that applied part, because they right away you were doing. So I think, thank God I fell into that stream and I didn't go a purely academic stream. And then I think your brain is just like, when you're younger, you can mask. When you're younger, you can pick up the slack for yourself. And as you get older, it becomes harder. And the more shit you go through, it becomes harder. And when you start realizing, okay, I've also had some trauma here. Like I've had some weird things happen in my life, and there's been some shitty things that may have happened to my parents that impacted the way they interacted with me. And it doesn't matter how much you love your family. Like when you start looking back and seeing some of the stuff that went on, and when you actually do the work to start kind of coming back to self and dealing with that trauma. And I hate talking like this because it's so like new agey or buzzwords, but it's the only way to say it. When you start dealing with trauma and you start feeling, not just recognizing that it's there, but actually doing the work, it makes ADHD worse, because your brain just starts to go, what the hell? Yeah. What the hell's going on? I don't know how to explain it other than that. It's like, it's like, feel like you're short circuiting when you really start trying to work on yourself in a way that forces you to acknowledge some of the stuff in your past.
So I suppose when you were younger, there was so much going on, because you're saying that you can't really pinpoint the ADHD because so much was going on. So you obviously had quite a bit of trauma when you was younger, going on a lot of issues. while having the ADHD, because it all seems quite a mix. Would that be fair enough to say?
I think so, yeah.
So, and then obviously due to the trauma, it could have triggered off things inside you, which made your ADHD worse. And as you said, it's a bit confusing because there was so many other dynamics going on when you was growing up, and how can I say, such a messy relationships, or relationships that should have been that weren't, and be that at the home and be that at school, and you had issues with that. So that's what made life really, really difficult for you.
And then we all go through traumas, right? We all go through stuff. There's been other things in life. People go through divorce, people go through career change, people go through, I mean, founding a business is traumatic, especially when you have ADHD. I'm a couple years into this and I'm not where I want to be, you know, and I've had a pretty successful career. Like, I've done some neat stuff. And so not having that success and just watching it kind of go like that and having to recalibrate, and like, I know I'm going to get there, but as a typical ADHDer, like, I have like all these parts of my business that I feel like are all important. And then I have another part of I call it my career in my life, which is, you know, I got really into wanting to learn about early stage investment and women in venture capital and women in startups, and be part of that scene as well of early stage angel investment. So I kind of ended up splitting myself into two, working on a business and then working on, okay, what are other ways I can potentially long-term make money and support the kinds of businesses and people and humans and organizations that I want to. And if you do any of that stuff, like venture capital, early investment, that is some pretty scary stuff to get into, and you got to be really careful with it and who you align with. So that took a lot of my energy. So it's like, okay, Theresa, you've spent a lot of time learning about that. You've spent a lot of time learning about these business streams. Now it's time to pick one and execute. You spread so thin. Totally. I really believe that a lot of ADHD entrepreneurs go through this, and if you nurture things and eventually can narrow it down, it's gonna come. Like, it'll come, but the runway is longer, and sometimes that's hard.
No, it is. I mean, we do have problems focusing, and we tend to start many things, and you know, and some of us don't finish it, or we water down our situation. So and this is one of the problems I've had all my life. It's not because I'm not capable, but it's true. It's like, what should I do? I'm capable of doing multiple things, but you got to be careful to water down your energy, and just focus on that one or two things, and that's the maximum you do. And that's always been the bane of our life, right? Isn't it, Theresa?
There's so much to do. There's so many things I want to do. But I will say, and I think that, you know, life is complicated, and human relationships are complicated. And where I have had some things I feel in my familiar relationships that were lacking. One thing that has been a benefit, and I am incredibly grateful for, is I had people help set me up. Like, I had help paying for university. I had help with my first car. I had help with my house. I had, you know, there were some things in my life, and there's no other way to say it other than privilege. I've worked very hard too. I continue to work very hard, but if I was really, really struggling or bootstrapping myself and didn't have some economic support that I fell back on, I'm not sure I would still be in business. And so that's the truth. And I recognize that. And I think about, okay, you know, you've had some runway. I've taken huge risks with investment and with my life in order to do this, but I've been given some runway. I've planned accordingly, and I'm grateful for that. And now it's time to execute and zero in on stuff. I mean, I feel very successful in many ways, but it's time to find the one business stream and the one niche to really hit go. Yeah,
no, I know what you're saying. So How has ADHD and your what's it?
CPT, whatever.
I can't even pronounce it. Yeah, I'm not even going to try.
It's all fun. I hate it. I hate the labels. I hate it.
Yeah,
My brain
I know it is.
It's different because it's different. Like our brains are different. Sometimes they're different genetically. Sometimes they're different because of environment and things we've gone through. Everybody's human. I also think, quite frankly, that like all this stuff about neurodivergency, and I think our world is changing. I think post-COVID, not to get too wackadoo, but our world, the universe, whatever we're in, whether it's a a simulation or it's real, it doesn't matter because it's our experience is real. But the old way of thinking in hierarchies and that neurotypical way, like maybe they're going the way of the dinosaur. And maybe it's time that we embrace more of that large scale thinking, because it's almost like we're gonna be trying to keep up and work with AI. Yeah. And so we can't all be linear and one foot in front of the other. Like we're gonna have to start thinking about things that are way off in the distance and working back. And that is where I get really frustrated with neurotypicals in our world, is how slow they are sometimes. I think they're slow. And I don't like being told that I have a disability or a problem, when half the time I'm looking around the room and I'm wondering why it's taking people so long to catch up.
Yeah.
Just gonna say it.
Totally. Like I said, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's because we don't fit in the system, a school system, which is set up in a particular way. Look, way back in the days, it must have been, I think it was now, back in the 60s, it wasn't good to be left-handed. You know, in certain countries, they would make you be right-handed. You had to be right-handed. There must be something wrong with you, right? And now things are caught up where there isn't nothing wrong with you. Some people are left, some people are right. And I just believe it's exactly the same situation. There is nothing wrong with you. We are supposed to be hunters, gatherers, homemakers, etc., etc. So I don't think it's a disability. I just think it's a situation you've just got to accept what you have. And then it's a situation knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, and know what you can with your strength, what you can use it for, and then use it as a superpower. What you're weak on, you work with other people. Just like any business, you could have a large business, right? And if your business is weak in certain things, you pull in a temporary partner to deal with a particular job, because you can't fulfill that part of the job, right? So because they're stronger on doing something else, you partner temporarily for a particular business, but it's the same thing, you know. You're different, and you're supposed to be different. So what you do, you partner with someone else, or you partner with AI, because AI can do the stuff that you can't do, and then you do what you do great. And that's how I see it.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
Yeah. We're not broken, we're just different. We're different, not broken. There's no such word as broken. Unfortunately, I have seen people say they are broken, which is really, really, what was it? I was looking at a post actually this morning, and a post went up in, I think it was Instagram. And they said, one person made a post saying that, you know, they wish they never had ADHD. And then people were replying, and one reply, which was quite unnerving, said, "I'm fed up of being broken." And I had to reply to the person. I said, "But you're not broken. You're actually quite gifted. You just haven't accepted the gift, and haven't accepted where you are weak on, and then what to do about that." And I actually suggested just listen to the podcast, because this is what I talk about in the podcast, because you've got to stop thinking about it. Because as soon as you think you're broken, then you've just put yourself in a state of a coma that you can't do nothing. And this is the reason why I started this podcast, because for years I stopped myself from doing a lot of things. I wouldn't show my face online. I wouldn't use my voice because I hated my voice. I didn't think this, I didn't think that. And then I got to a stage where enough was enough, because I was sick to death of people saying, but Eli, I don't understand what is wrong with you. You're very good at this, that, and the other, and you have a gift. And you think that you're not good at these things. And enough was enough. So I did certain things in the last 2 years to get me in a position to do podcasts. Now, 2 years ago, there's no way I could have done it. And then I thought to myself, my God, I spent all those years fearful because I thought I can't, I'm not worthy, I'm not this, not that, because I was dyslexic and whatever else. And I thought, well, in my way, I was thinking I was broken. And so I wanted to bring people like yourself and others so they can understand they're not broken. It's just, look at these entrepreneurs, they're doing it, they're getting on with it, and they're all neurodivergent. It is okay to be different, not broken, to be different.
And most really successful, creative, innovative game changers were ADHD or are ADHD.
Or dyslexic. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people that have the CPTSD, like it's that chicken and egg thing. There's so many people with ADHD that have been so effing gaslit into thinking, oh, there's something wrong with you, or your emotions, or you did this, or you thought about it this way, or you question people. Problem. And I feel bad in some ways. I look back and women get asked this a lot who are diagnosed later. Oh, don't you wish that you'd been diagnosed sooner and our structures in the DSM-5 had actually been able to assess for women? And in some regard, yeah, sure. Like I think if I had been assessed earlier, what could I have done? But in other regards, I'm like, I would have been labeled and I would have had a label on myself. And so I think a lot of the people that are dealing with that have been maybe diagnosed, not everybody, but diagnosed early childhood. And then that I don't like, the one thing I just despise about it, and I'm doing a panel this week and any kind of talk around the challenges with ADHD, this as soon as you are labeled as a child in the workplace, whatever, it has become, they did that because of ADHD, or they're wrong because of this, or, oh, it becomes this way for people to undermine you, delegitimize you. And not, people aren't always bad. Sometimes it's an inherent bias. Sometimes it's just the way we think. It's the way we've been taught to think. But like, just because I have an emotional reaction or somebody has an emotional reaction, it's not because they're having an over-the-top reaction all the time. Maybe sometimes it's because of ADHD, but a lot of the time, the emotional reaction was justified. It was justified. But because people don't want to have to deal with it, they're going to say, oh, that's because this person is XYZ. They don't have to take accountability. And that's where I get really on my soapbox, is watching people label others and use that to undermine so that they don't have to take accountability for their own shit.
No, you're totally right. No, I hear you. And the thing is, we've just got to be very careful and just make sure, listeners, we've got to just remember we're not broken. There's nothing wrong with us. We're just different. It's okay to be different. Just look at what you're strong on. What can you leverage with that strength? Remember, you can multiply that with you using your strength in your business or in your personal life. Remember, so-called people that aren't neurodivergent, they have weaknesses and strength. They're not perfect. No one is perfect. So you have to remember that everybody has weaknesses and strengths, and it is okay to have that, and it is okay to be different. It is a good thing to be different, because if you wasn't, what a boring world it would be. Oh my. Theresa, it really would be dismal, to say the least. So Theresa, how do you help people in your business from the point of view? Do you help people one-to-one? Do you help them from the point of view that you do groups or corporate? How does that work?
Yeah, so I like to work, we like to work best with with entrepreneurs and smaller teams, but I mean, I have done larger corporations and work for those organizations as well. But ultimately, I think that we're best at helping people figure out kind of what their strengths are and what their most compelling stories are. And often people are ashamed of things or want to hide them because they think they're going to be judged for them. And those are the stories that resonate the most with people and their audiences and make people want to come and listen to them or buy their product or follow them, or it's those human moments and those stories that resonate the best.
I think you're right.
Yeah, so I think that is ultimately what we do, is we help people recognize, the hidden strengths and stories behind their why, and then be able to articulate them and tell them and be proud of them. And people don't buy into things. People buy things and they adopt things and they follow things and concepts that are solving problems for them personally. But people are also really craving that authenticity and integrity and human touch, especially now.
I agree.
People buy into ideas and concepts that they believe in, not just products.
And just briefly, I just want to say, especially with the event of AI, there's a lot of things that people are using and copying and doing the same thing. It all sounds the same. The pictures look the same. Videos are being created are very similar. And I think what's going to happen, especially in the next couple of years, people are going to crave authenticity, because a lot of people are going to look very samey. So how are you going to be any different? So I think as time goes on, these tools should be used as tools, but they're supposed to show who you are as a person. Me, customizing. Because I was working with Unbootstrapped, a lot of founders that were just like me, starting their business, didn't have huge budgets. And of course, it's really hard to make impact for somebody or a team like that when they're on that kind of a budget. So what am I going to do for those folks? Of course, we'll do our thought leadership over social media, give tips and tricks, but we've started developing online templates and digital packages that we can sell. And I've been going through and I can't keep up to AI. I wanted an AI agency since I started this thing, and then it blew up and I was like, okay, and now it's beyond me. So in terms of helping people, okay, here are your prompts, just for something simple. The first one we're going to do is for media relations. If you think you have a story and you want to get it out to media and you want to get on podcasts and you don't know how to pitch that, okay, do you go to an agency and pay $10 a month for a retainer? No, you can't afford it. That's not where your business is at. How do you set up the building blocks to do this for yourself? Grab a consultant if you need, where needed. How do you distribute this information? Oh, I'm just going to go on ChatGPT and say, write a press release about my new product. That doesn't always work. Never mind knowing where to distribute it or how to make that human connection with folks like yourself, right? Where you could actually be interviewed and featured in something. So it's not just okay, here are the prompts that you could use to write your communications plan and your media relations plan. Here's the actual information you're going to need to feed into ChatGPT or whatever you're using so that it can help you write these documents. Because AI is only as good as the information we put in it, and AI is only as good and as the human story and the integrity that you're popping in there to get the result you want back. Yeah. So there's a lot of, I think you're right. I think people are creating a lot of content, creating a lot of campaigns, and over some of these platforms, and I think everybody's really excited about it, and we're learning it. There's going to be so much just spam and just crap out there. Yeah, it is. We're eventually going to hit a wall and we're going to have to recalibrate. And I guess that's what folks like myself this is where
to get better, right?
You're totally right. And this is where the podcasts come into it. The people are going to crave things like, things like this because it's the human touch. And little things like this are going to help be more authentic in a way. But unfortunately, Theresa, we have to put a line in the sand there. It was beautiful speaking with you. So thank you for letting us into your world.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. What and how can they do to contact you if they need to contact you about the business?
Sure. Well, they can go to the website, which is startmeuppr.com. They can email me. They can look at our social. I'm Theresa Tayler, Tayler at startmeuppr.com. They can look at my socials. They can grab our onboarding form. It's right there on the website, and enter our intergalactic stratosphere that way as well.
Well, what I'll do, listeners, as always, I'll have all the information down below. You'll be able to copy and paste, click away, and have that wonderful conversation with Theresa. As you can see, she's on her journey to being successful. She knows exactly what needs to be done going forward, and she may be the lady for you. So, Theresa, thank you for being with us. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. And in the meantime, listeners, sayonara.